my gosh. You know what day it is? It's Monday. All right, yay. That was a good intro, right? Sorry, that was a very quick one. Very fast, off the cuff intro. Toes. Getting straight into the talk. No time for cheering, boys. Welcome in, everybody. How you doing today? Good to see you. I got my drink. I got my computer. I got my microphone. I got my people. Good friends. Space nerds. We're going to talk about toes. Excuse me. We're going to talk about a few different things today. It is Mondays. As you know, Monday mornings with tomato. We're going to discuss what's been going on in my favorite space games. Primarily that's Star Citizen. This week it's definitely all Star Citizen. We've got... Jesus, I keep forgetting to restart this Stream Deck, man. We've got some lore to go over. I'm going to be talking about the Crusader, or rather all the Stanson Systems lore. We're going to touch on quite a bit of talk actually here about... Oh, this is Mission Giver stuff. About control surfaces, going all the way back to 2019, I think, and what they were sort of doing... 2018, what they were doing with aerodynamic flight in Star Citizen and how that progressed throughout the years to what we are looking at now. Besides that, we'll also be looking at in-game rewards, how that has okay. We also have a ship to give away. I think it's about time too. I think it's about time. Drum rolling. Who's gonna win the Asgard after all this time it's been?
Spyrite 14.
Spyrite? Spyrite 14. Friend. Answering a question? What question did they answer?
Medical, I guess.
Spyrite! Thank you for answering that question. Invalid giveaways? Yes. Oh, yes. We have actually a couple of giveaways we'll be re-rolling soon. So keep an ear out for that probably later this week. A couple people haven't claimed theirs from earlier this month. So we'll be re-rolling. If you got involved in the giveaways we had last month, you have a chance of winning that, and we'll let you know. But yeah, Spyrite. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, congratulations on that. Thank you for getting involved in the giveaway. Honestly, I don't know when you got into it. I'm sure it was a fantastic, colorful time. You being here was one of the more magical parts of that day. I'm sure of it. So thank you. And congrats on an Asgard. All right. What was I saying? Oh, we're going to talk about in-game rewards. Because this has been something that they've been kind of soon TMing for years now, and it's finally getting a real focus with 3.23 or 4.2.1. I cannot get that patch out of my mouth correctly. But first, a hello to you. Folks, it's been a while since we've done a proper hello to the whole crew. I think somebody subbed up. Space Guy, thanks for subbing for 10 months. Ken Smackery Doodle Doos. Appreciate you, my dude. It's been a while since I've gone down the list and actually said hello to everybody. And when I say a while, I mean like 3 days maybe. So I want to say hi to everybody before we get started. Ananzi, good to see you. I also posted this as like a Q&A in chat. If you want to throw questions out, feel free. I didn't have too much to go over today. And the bulk of today is going to be looking at Squadron 42's mission design. Upon suggestion by good friend and supporter Lycos in the Discord, we are taking a big old jump back to the briefing room. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is later, but it is it's the official marketing sort of vlogs that they're going to be doing for Squadron 42, and they released the first one a long time ago. They haven't started releasing them again yet since, but it should be an interesting watch nowadays. Daft Digit, good to see you working and lurking. As long as it's a snurkin', my dude. Appreciate you being here. Bastin, if you smell peanut butter when you get up in the morning, check under your bed to see a chipmunk is there eating your peanut butter. Why a chipmunk? Generally, it's been turtles, in my experience. Cheer Halibel, good to see you. DK, with the freaking bird head swinging around. Good to see you dancing, dude. Joe, good to see you. Sevens. Maverick, my man. Mrs. Tomato, Yui, Zombie Goldfish, AAK. Good to see you, dude. You're not late. Never late. As long as you get a little dancing. Just one step. A little step off to the left. Maybe one off to the right. All right, maybe 2 more steps now. 1 back, 1 forward. Cool. See, you're on time. You're good. Yo, Lee. There you go. That's the energy I'm talking about. Got here just in time. That's what I mean. Baldorn. Where do bad rainbows go? To Prism. Mother. You get one. That freaking blows my ears out, dude. That's so loud. Moo Daddy. Good to see you, Space Guy. Calivac. Squadron 42, 3026. I hope we can last that long. Gala Walla Way. Sorry you didn't get that one. Brigadier Bo, good to see you, my dude. Unloading whale, unloading in chat. Bonjour, bonjour. Shed. Hello, welcome in. Michael. Zero. Falcon. Please start. No. I will take longer not to start now. Simon, greetings from Florida. Hello, Florida. Been to that place before. Been around known parts. Tricky. What ships do you think get the PDCs? It sounds like it's going to be basically all the big ones. If a Reclaimer's getting PDCs, I would think that just about anything... anything that... Probably not like a Galaxy. 150 meters and bigger, maybe? Give or take? The A90 Jump's got PDCs, right? It's got to have PDCs already. So we got the Idris, has PDCs, 890 Jump. The Reclaimer's getting them. You think the Galaxy will have them? Galaxy's like 110 meters long, isn't it? Perseus has... Oh, the Perseus has PDCs? Okay. Then it's a whole different ball game. And I guess all these ships can have PDCs. That's kind of surprising. I feel like that's a little bit of a... Not something that they were going to do, but decided to do to make these ships more defendable. Like, they realized that they're going to have to make missile gameplay a lot more exciting. And in order to make it not too overwhelming for ships, they're just throwing PDCs on the bigger ones. You like what they're doing? Got to take out turrets before torps get used. Yeah, that's a good call, Zero. And they laid that out at last year IAE. They had that episode where John Crew and Richard Tyrer came on, and they talked about how they want it to be kind of like a puzzle to take apart larger ships. You are right on the money, my friend. It'd be nice to swap unused turrets for PDCs or AI. One of the recent changes that got leaked, that Perseus has PDCs. You're thinking that too, Perseus is smaller than the other, maybe all large ships get them. Yeah, seems like it. Cool. I mean, PDCs also mean that E-War is going to be a little bit more interesting. Gosh, man. EMPs are going to be so powerful in this game once they start doing power and stuff. Powers and things. All right. Collapse that. Throw that over here. Whoops. I don't even need that up right now. This is mission giver stuff. That very end along with that. What was this even going to be, man? I don't think I had... Hold on a second. Why did I have this video pulled up? Mission giver specific area. What is this? What is this? What is this?
That's where the toilets will come in. But it's all going to be down to that.
Dude, this video is so quiet.
If there's a mission giver for a specific area,
I can like barely hear that. Hold on a second. Crank it.
like the workers' district Louisville that needs to go in for
That barely
for
did
a
anything.
specific reason, then that's the time it would go in, right?
Okay, it's not important anyways. Freaking insanely quiet. You honestly like things like the whole C and up? Should feel like things like the whole C and up should have PDCs. I think it'll be that way. God. I must have restarted this computer by now. Hold on a second. Let me see if my stream deck will not open. Perfect. There's just the stream deck software is just off the computer. Good Lord. Oh well. All right. What are control surfaces? This is a long time coming. Big attempt to make atmospheric flight feel significantly different from space flight. Obviously, this didn't become a thing to consider until Planet Tech became a thing. So 2015, 2016 was when this really started to actually be a thing at all. And you'll see here that it wasn't until 2017 that they really started to get a handle on this. But even with this early model of atmospheric flight, it still wasn't entirely true to what they wanted to do. Now, we're going to skip through the different years as we get closer and closer to the current time and what is actually being done for control surfaces. This is kind of a dive into the development of it, but also it's meant to sort of speak towards what the point of it is. So here we start out with John Pritchett, who actually was a very well-liked developer who was working on the physics simulations of the game and unfortunately did not want to relocate to work with the rest of the team, was working from home at the time and parted ways with the company. He's now working on X4, interestingly enough, but here's some of what he was saying about the flight model back then. This is David Coulson. He is who took over from John Pritchett.
But we don't want it to be that you can't control it in the atmosphere, which is just not fun. We actually have had some of those issues with really small ships like the Merlin and the Gravlev bikes, because they can now fly in the atmosphere as well, and they're really small and light, and you really get pushed around a lot in like, you know, in high winds and you're moving really fast. It feels really strongly that you're not quite in control anymore, which feels really good, and it really separates the flight from being in space to being in the atmosphere, which is what the goal was.
The way I approach that actually is more through the control systems, which is what interfaces the player, or in real life, the pilot or whatever, with the vehicle. That sets limits on what they can do with the vehicle and how the vehicle performs or whatever. So you can still have realistic physics while at the same time creating more of a traditional gameplay experience through the way the controls are interpreted and the vehicle responds to the player. We
basically have this ability to specify goals in position or velocity or acceleration, and the ship will try and achieve those goals. So the most complicated one is position, which isn't used for general flight, it's more used for AI and stuff, where you say, I want to get to this goal, and the system will try and figure out how much...
Man, this game looked different back then.
...to power each thruster and everything to actually achieve that goal. We use the velocity goal and the acceleration goal for when you're actually flying around, you know, you are controlling the ship. And those controllers now basically include drag and gravity in their predictions. So if you say, hey, I want to get to 200 meters per second in this particular direction, the algorithm will look through all of the current forces that it has available and go, okay, hey, gravity is helping us in this particular direction that we're trying to accelerate, so we don't actually need to give as much thruster force. Or maybe if you're going the other direction, you need to give extra gravity to counteract the other side of gravity, which maybe your thrusters just don't have enough thrust to give enough force to counteract gravity plus what you actually want to move in that direction. And so that's now included in that core model, which is the one part of it. And then the turbulence stuff is a second layer that we have on top of the flight control system. So, we have the control logic, which is you or an AI give input into the system, and the system will try and figure out how to get to that configuration. And then after that, we have all the extra stuff, which is things like turbulence, just random error and stuff like that gets added on top, which is, you can think of it as like the external forces that are moving or attempting to move the ship that you are not in control of. And so obviously turbulence and wind is the big part of that one.
Okay. So that's around the verse right there. This is, if you didn't notice, this is absolutely not inside Star Citizen. You can tell from the runtime here. Sorry, let me go back to that. You can tell from the runtime down here, which you can't tell because the screen's blocking it. 46 minutes long. There used to be a lot of talking in these to describe things that generally they spend like maybe a minute going through inside Star Citizen now. But ultimately, I wanted to show you this because you can hear. There's not a single mention of control surfaces or anything that might have to do with aerodynamics based around like the ship parts moving and all that kind of stuff. So they're still talking about ships as just kind of like a singular modeled plane flying through, not plane like airplane plane, but like the shape plane flying through an atmosphere and how it would react to the wind and gravity and things like that. Now here is a little bit later, just the next year, as they showed this more in practice as to where they wanted to go.
Everyone's favorite, the Aurora. So the Aurora, it's a flying brick really, isn't it? It's not really got much of a lift surface. So it flies a lot slower because it struggles to cut through the air. It's got a lot more instability, as you can see there. We're trying to yaw here, but it's just not doing it because it's hitting that wind and kicking back. Another downside to this beyond that, the thrusters have to do a heck of a lot more work just to do this. So
this is still how we fly right now, and pretty used to that pulling feeling. I remember when they brought that in, and that's what ships generally do.
Running hotter, they're consuming more fuel. Doesn't mean that it's like this all the time. You can get around this to an extent. Again, bring the thrust capacity down. You're going to be flying slower.
I should add that your thrusters are doing all this work when you have a super not aerodynamic ship. Like in the Gladius, you can actually fly along stable and turn your thrusters off, and the ship will glide, which obviously you can't do in the Aurora. You're going to have the thrusters working an awful lot more.
Yeah, you're going to go down.
Now I've turned the thrusters off to glide, but I can't speak towards whether or not that had anything to do with wind resistance, as opposed to just the momentum that I had. Like, I don't think in the current game, if you turned off the thrusters on your ship, sitting still, you would start to glide away, right? That's what they're talking about with control surfaces. So that just wasn't a thing back then, as far as I'm aware.
Pretty quickly with this.
Exactly.
So let's have a look at what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of debug stuff. You can see what's going on. So the red line is the drag, and it's obviously moving around because of some of the turbulence in the air. And you roll and pitch, and you get this sudden force of lift pulling the ship up. And this, unfortunately, we couldn't have aerodynamic flight at the Drake Virtual Training Facility today, but this difference is massive, right? If you try and strafe around and like circle strafe people in space, and you try and do that in atmosphere, it's going to go quite badly wrong for you. You need to really adjust your flight strategies in atmosphere. And the hope is that you're going to go into atmosphere, and atmospheric flight is going to be a bit more like planes, and that difference is going to be really, really drastic.
Now, that's an interesting thing to say. There are rumors swirling just from people getting to try a little bit of the very broken, very unfinished version of control surfaces that's in the ETU, just in the code. It's not actually in the game to play. And there are some possible indications that they've greatly dampened the effects of up and down strafe, which obviously would lead to, like he's saying here, a lot more flight-like planes.
A bit more like planes, and that difference is going to be really, really drastic. And having that difference in gameplay is really, really exciting.
Yeah.
So we're also going to take a quick look at ship management.
Yeah. So again, how do you manage all this stuff in atmosphere?
Okay.
You got to keep.
Now, taking another step forward here, this is 4 years later. So at this point, they've gone through their big old 2020-ish, 2021-ish kind of move over to focus on Squadron 42. And I think they had a better idea of where they wanted to go in terms of ship function and management. This is when engineering was more in development. Obviously, as we're about to hear, control surfaces was getting into development. They started to have better plans for Maelstrom and stuff like that. So better times, because it's not necessarily just talking about the aerodynamics, but actually mentioning control surfaces, at least for as far as I can tell, for the first time in the history of the development.
For multi-crew gameplay. It is. All things in their time. Let's see. Regarding flight
loud.
physics on planets, things like VTOL mode sort of lose meaning when you can just hover upside down or nose pointing at the ground. Why does it make flying easy, especially for things like the Prospector? While it does make flying easy, especially for things like the Prospector, it does break immersion. Are there any plans to force ships to stay close to horizontal at slow speeds? This would also affect ground combat and make it more necessary, as you wouldn't just be able to point straight down at targets.
It sounds like somebody asked that question like last week.
Just that one is yes. So it's probably worth explaining. So at the moment we have aero surfaces on these ships, but it doesn't fly like a plane.
We've heard this on so many times on this channel. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry if you've been here for one of these talks.
So they're still driven by the thrusters, but we do change them based on the planet they're on. So they do lose some power in atmosphere, but the thrusters to generate the performance in space have to be set in strengths. To generate the accelerations that we require in space. And then when you fly in atmosphere, you lose some efficiency, but we still need the strength of the thrusters to be able to push the ship through the air. And actually pushing aero surfaces through the air takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. So we are limited in terms of, to get the maneuverability in atmosphere currently, we still need quite strong. Well, we still need quite strong thrusters, which means you can hover quite easily, but that's not always going to be the case. So in the future, we are going to move towards control surfaces, and this is going to allow us to move the movement of the ship from thrusters to aerodynamics. So it's going to be the aerodynamics driving the maneuverability of the ship in atmosphere, and then the thrusters are just going to help a little bit. They're going to help just move the ship and allow the thruster layouts to kind of do their work, but it's not going to be the primary source. So if you're flying a Gladius, for example, and you go really slow, it's just not going to have the power to kind of keep it up. And that's where the VTOL ship's going to come in, where they can transform and fly in VTOL and hover, and that's where they'll have the advantage. But we need to add control surfaces first and work out how we do all the controls with that as well, because it's quite a complex problem to solve.
That's not fair. VTOL ships don't get that. That's not fair. All right. Couple years after that, we got to the in-game demonstration of control surfaces. So a couple jumps from the aerodynamics to the actual control surfaces being demoed. But this was CitizenCon 2023. And this is what they... Doesn't sound like they're like feeling particularly close like in the next month on this, but I do think this might be something we see EPTU this year. At least.
Actually, Brent, can you try W and S on the keyboard instead? Oh, it doesn't work. Oh. No, it doesn't. Yep. Okay. No, the stick is affecting us. Okay, anyways, we're going to go down as far as possible. So the new aerodynamic system is a complete replacement of the aerodynamic system that you currently have. And you need your control surfaces to actually turn the ship around. It simulates the airflow over your lift surfaces, and therefore the slower you become, the less effective those control surfaces will be in order to turn your ship. So we can demonstrate this. So if Brent just sits here and yaws left and right, you will see he cannot go further than that. That is in line with what real airplanes also experience when they're trying to use the rudder to yaw left and right. So what Brent can do here is he can roll and he can pull to actually change his direction.
Rolling. Let's go.
Okay, so just for this demo, we added a button. The button is called thrusted.
Yamix, how's it going, dude? Thoughts on Squadron 42 release in 2026? Hopefully. Big hopes. If they keep master modes as they are, please kill me. Sounds like they're changing. Who knows when? I think that whenever this gets dropped in, that's when that's gonna change. And this needs to happen soon. Like quantum drive, quantum travel's gotta change. Atmospheric flight's gotta work. Gotta dial this stuff in. You gotta release that game next year. Crazy how long they've been talking about it and working towards this feature. Yeah. I mean, this, along with engineering, both started development around the same time back like in 2020, 21. It's wild.
Disconnect. Because at the moment in the PU, when you go through a planet, you're using the thrusters to rotate. We're not doing that anymore. So Brent, disconnect the thrusters, please, and put the ship into a purposeful stall. A stall happens when the airflow over a wing ceases, or over a lift surface ceases. And then at some point you will not have any authority anymore, and your ship will not turn and so on, and you will basically fall out of the sky. That is naturally a state that every plane wants to avoid naturally, right? And this is happening right here. Brent is not able to use the control surfaces right now because the ship is in a process of stalling. However, the airflow will pull the nose back into the wind, and once you have enough speed, he can actually, well, he gets authority back over these control surfaces.
He becomes the authority figure. These control surfaces are my dependents.
That means for you as players, what you can actually do, you can do aerobraking, you can do pure gliding if you want to. You can even do like competitions like, I don't know, like drop ships out of orbit and then see how far they glide. This is all possible with a new system. So let's talk about the problem, how do you come to a stop now? To come to a stop with the new system, you need to purposefully put the ship into a stall. But don't worry, when we don't have the thrusters disconnected, IFCS will help you. So you're gonna bring down the speed more and more until you're reaching stall speed, which is about now. And then the thrusters will kick in and catch you. That means, however, you are now in a state that the thrusters don't like, right? So at the moment we have turned this up, but in the future you will not be able to hold this for long.
That right there. That's such an important line. And I asked my question with the Star Citizen Live last month about this capability, but they didn't answer it. And they've been very quiet about this particular part of control surfaces. So the way this is mainly going to affect players is when you're flying into atmosphere, you're going to start to get more wear on your ship thrusters. This is all part of like the engineering aspect of the game. So if you are overtaxing your thrusters when you don't need to, they're gonna wear down faster. If they wear down faster, you don't have to fix them, but you can. You can repair them yourself. You can take them to a space station and repair them. You can get them repaired when you're at an outpost or a city. Like that's just a deterrent from doing things the wrong way. But it'll still be really noticeable. And a lot of people have been asking, what does this mean for people who are mining or need to focus more time on landing? For mining ships, if you pay close attention, I think every mining ship has VTOL thrusters. There might be one that doesn't, but I'm pretty sure they all do. same or similar goes for salvage ships. So it's not like they're not planning for this kind of thing. And I don't think necessarily that you're just going to fall out of the sky when you're hovering. I think it's going to be
right?
just
so
like
at the moment
this.
we have turned this off, but in the future you will not be able to hold this for long. So if Brent, for example,
So he says you won't be able to hold this for long. I don't think that you're just going to like drop out. I think there's going to be wear and tear on your thrusters, and they will just show you that, hey, you're taking more damage as you sit longer like that, giving people the ability to take as long as they need, but get a little bit more of a consequence for taking too long. That's what I think it's going to happen. He's saying here that you won't be able to hold it for too long, but CIG is being pretty lenient with players with things like this. Jammin', thank you for the sub. Using your Prime sub in here on this stream, bro. Appreciate you. Said still love the game, bugs and everything. Thanks for doing the heavy lifting and digging through all the data for us. Thanks for digging with me, dude. You need a few shovels of different sizes to get through all this stuff. Appreciate you being here.
so at the moment we have turned this off, but in the future you will not be able to hold this for long. So if Brent, for example, now from a hover, strafe is left, more left, more left, more left. The wind flow again pulls the ship over, and you go forward again. Okay, so
This also makes me wonder, like, how much are we going to be able to use our bottom thrusters to sort of helicopter places, you know? I don't know how to describe that.
and you go
but-
forward again. Okay, so now Brent, now show us how to come to a hover, and do we have some water here?
This is where I was really hoping they were going to show it, but they did not show us the shutting down thrusters or anything like that. So that's mostly what we have so far in terms of information on control surfaces. There have been little bits of information here and there over the last several months as we're getting closer and closer, but that's mostly like monthly report stuff. I would suggest checking out the monthly report videos for those tidbits. I will be covering these all the way up to release. I really like the hovering idea. I hope it's a fun mechanic and it's got a little bit of a consequence to it. But I have no idea when it's coming out. So we'll keep covering it as long as they're working on it. And I'm guessing it'll be in the monthly report in the next few days. So I'll see you guys there. Until the next time. You have a video where you talk about the inventory revamp. It is so slow and inconsistent. There's a video on my main channel that I made probably, let me see. Probably just drop the link in chat. All right. I believe it's this one. I'll drop this link for you in chat. This one talks a little bit about inventory. It doesn't go into tons of detail like we just did for this deep dive, but it at least covers some of the basics. Oh, heard that. How long will it take CIG to implement these changes across all ships? 3 to 5 years, says you. Fingers crossed for that. 3 to 5 years. That's a lot of ships. I actually just released the newest exclusive video for anybody who's counting. Oh, it doesn't even show up on here yet. Wait, did I not add it to the playlist? Add it to the playlist. Well, there will be a new exclusive video for anybody who is a YouTube channel member. If you're on Twitch or on Patreon, you can also type into chat !exclusive, and that will take you to the Discord channel where we post all of the exclusive links for you guys. You do have to have your Discord linked to whatever platform you use to support. But once you do, you can hit that link. It'll take you to all of the exclusive videos you have access to. Thank you so much for supporting, keeping the stream going. You're lovely. You're lovely folks. Will control surfaces work in space? No, they have nothing to control. They're without control. They also have no codependence. They've lost all avenues of abuse in space. Want to know how the new flight system will work with brick ships? Half the ships in the game have no wings. Yeah, those will be the ships that generally don't want to go in atmosphere as much. That is a part of the game that I do wonder how hard CIG is going to go on. And that relates to engineering. That relates to Maelstrom, control surfaces, like all these things that are supposed to be pretty consequential to what spaceship you choose to fly. Because, you know, you don't want to fly in atmosphere. You want to be able to fly quickly in between planets. How many players are just going to be pissed that their dream ship is no longer meant for the gameplay that they want? Them's my feels. What video did you watch in the background? We are watching a couple different videos from around the verses in the past. All right. Next up on today's docket, a little look at CitizenCon 2953, 2023 again. Look at that. Control surfaces, in-game rewards, all the things. I actually don't have too much to go over on this. Just this one clip where they kind of talk about when they were wanting to do this. And then we're going to take a look at Mr. Kraken's overview of the things that they're bringing in. So a lot of things in Star Citizen take multiple years to happen, but I do think it's worth going back and finding them when they do. This was probably the biggest moment during their different Citizen Cons where they used the idea of in-game rewards as something players would be like really excited for. And back then, this was definitely a time when in-game rewards weren't even really a thing. Like you weren't, they're barely a thing now. I think we're just now starting to get them in a big way. Which is why I wanted to draw attention to
Cargo
this.
containers. You might want to avoid shooting blindly and accidentally blowing up your potential profits. So look out for those types of containers.
Still don't have those though.
Back to mission progression. We'll be introducing perks and rewards as part of fulfilling contracts and raising reputation with these companies. For rewards, we'll have branded ship and tool skins, branded clothing. There will be collectibles to decorate your hab, hangar, or ship, or you can put them anywhere you want. And there'll be more exclusive rewards that we'll be revealing later.
So most of the time when these rewards would be handed out back during this, it was like maybe a holiday event, like the Halloween things. They would do the masks you could get, but it never really got to the point where it felt like you were just taking part in something in the game and then getting something in game for doing that. The whole idea of even trading things in to get ships from Wicklow is like brand new as of this year. So still not something people were really expecting to happen. And good golly gee, after this, I definitely thought Reputation would take a step faster further than this.
Thank you. For perks, you'll get access to more items in shops and discounts on specific items. And all of these rewards and perks you need to earn in the game. You cannot just buy them.
People were like, yeah, dude. So
next, let's have a look at freight elevators and hangars.
It was an exciting thing. Glad they brought it up. Glad they put that out there. Interestingly, there is no mention of scripts here. I don't think it was necessarily part of the design at that point, but it works out. Not all the perks, but still get skins and stuff. Yeah, so from this, we're really seeing like branded ships and tool skins, branded clothing. You can see here they've got like the jacket from Ling, Red Wind box and stuff like that. And going off of Mr. Kraken's post on RSI, make sure to give him a follow. Check out his resources. He has actually made wonderful infographics showing the rewards we're getting for the event coming up this month in 3.21.1. 4.2.1. Oh my gosh. So you can scroll through these and see that a lot of it is, can we make this a little bigger? Hold on a second. New tab. And new tab. So you can see these are Hurston Dynamics skins. You've got the Hurston Dynamics prints on the gun, Hurston Dynamics colors, yellow and black and yellow. This one is R-Corp. Same idea. Same vibe. This is probably going to be my go-tos for the skins and stuff. And it includes both jumpsuits, multi-tools, armors, weapons, ship skins, and paints, and clothing. Very similar to what they were saying back during this slide. So it's good to see this stuff coming along. You and I we were all counting the months, and while they didn't necessarily say they would get everything in the game by the end of last year, they did say they'd get most of it, and I don't think they got most of it. I think they got like a little less than most of it, which is still not exactly where we wanted to be, but they're starting to get more of this sort of progression stuff into the game, which is important. Let's see, my friend made this list, and I don't think he's still updating it. But yeah, by December 2024, they had made half, sure, but barely. So it's good. It's good that that's coming in, and it's especially good that all this stuff will get locked to your account. This isn't like get it, possibly lose it the next update a few weeks later. This is, you're gonna retrieve these things and they're locked to your account. You got them for good, and I'm sure there'll be other times when you could get them if you wanted to, but this will be the first. We get to keep these skins even after 1.0. I do believe so. Yes. But this is only a step. I do love that we're getting in-game rewards, but this is part of a much bigger system that Star Citizen is really, really hurting to have. I'm glad that we're seeing security being brought back into the Stanton space stations, which is kind of putting people on check again to not be complete assholes. But that still doesn't really, that's not going to cover it all. And this idea of reputation, I think, is that here?
Yes.
No, we're looking for outlaw lifestyle, I believe. Character advancement, maybe that's it. Oh man, where is the freaking living on the edge? It's gotta be in this. Here we go.
Okay, in the entry deck, affect gameplay. What happens if we have good reputation? So if you had good
this is important. Rewards are great. Scripts is good, but reputation is supposed to be what kind of gates us from getting to certain places. Listen to what they were saying about reputation during that same CitizenCon, which is what, you know, sort of sets expectations as to where this is going to go.
To the stations. So how does the reputation gate in the entry deck affect gameplay? What happens if we have good reputation? So if you had good reputation, you could go straight through. This is no fuss, and it's the quickest way to maneuver through the station. However, you've got to put the time and the effort in to get to this point. What happens if you neutral reputation? So you might be waved through, maybe you have to pay a bribe, and you don't want to pay, so you're going to have to find an alternate pathing. Or you're going to have to build up your reputation. If you have bad reputation, and for all you naughty ones out there, I know some of you exist, this applies to you. In short, you're going to have a tough time, but you have options. So stealth via other pathways might be one of those options. You build your reputation up from scratch, or you could probably fight. Let's focus on those alternate pathways. The modules in the station are broken up into
Yeah, so you can keep going from there, and even the video starts to highlight these sorts of things. Faction areas, access linked to reputation. A black market would be where you'd think, you know, something like scripts would be used for trading. So the in-game rewards are a very good step forward and something that I hope they're doing constantly from now on with whatever they can scrounge up to do. And it doesn't have to just be with events. It could be with missions. It should be with missions and mission givers and things like that. But there's a whole other side of this that's banking on reputation that I am also hoping they can pick up and get working, because from Wicklow to scripts to in-game rewards to ship skins, all these things are all sort of orbiting around this overall system of progression that I think really depends on reputation. I hope that we get an update on that sometime this year. But I might break my finger crossing them so hard. Either way, there's a little update on in-game rewards. Good morning, caveman. How you doing? Watch your video with 10 pounds. Great work. I'm hooked again on this game after a 6-month hiatus. Yo, mostly due to my personal recent experience of the game. It was definitely playing better than it was 6 months ago, I think. Chill videos. I'm curious, how'd you take me and 10 pounds attitudes during that talk? Like overall, did you feel like we were happy, unhappy with the game? What was your take? Game visual and smoothness opened up after a new monitor and some memory fixes on your side. Yeah, memory will help with this game for sure. You're concerned with not all ships will be buyable with credits. Some will have to be earned. The Guardian's not buyable, but it's earnable. Why? I don't know about buyable or earnable, but there was an interesting line from Richard Tyrer in CitizenCon 2024 that I missed. I missed for months. And it wasn't until I was watching it back over maybe a couple months ago that I heard him say something very specific, and I was like, wait a second. That says something about this game and where they're going.
Reason. And
Listen to this.
Is where cyclical gameplay loops come in. Firstly, let's add all the manufacturers and ships in. I'll just give you a moment to take that in, because there's a lot. I actually had to ask them to take the variants out because it didn't fit on this slide. And let's zoom all the way into the prospector, a stalwart of the mining community.
Okay, hold on. Let me set this up, because this is, you asked a question, and I think this actually brings up an important topic. Richard Tyrer mentioned in regards to earning ships and getting ships in game and buying them, for anybody who's getting caught up in chat, it was asked, why are some ships already becoming earnable and not buyable? I can't really answer towards that. I think they should all be buyable. Obviously, CIG is trying to get people to do certain things in game. I think they should be buyable in game. But it does bring me back to a line that Rich Tyrer said during CitizenCon last year that sort of caught me off guard, and I think I missed it a few times, but it does speak a little bit towards where they want to go with this game. So that's why we're playing this. Listen to how this might affect earnable ships in game.
Firstly, let's add all the manufacturers and ships in. I'll just give you a moment to take that in, because there's a lot. I actually had to ask them to take the variants out, because it didn't fit on this slide. And let's zoom all the way into the prospector, a stalwart of the mining community.
Stalwart.
But let's say I really fancy acquiring a military Mark II Hornet.
Okay. A military Mark II Hornet. So he's talking F-7A.
Let's go on a simplified journey of how I could get one. Firstly, I know I won't be able to buy it, as it's a military ship.
There you go. I don't know why I didn't clock that the first time. Now, it being a military ship could mean literally like it's limited in the sense that it's only made for the military, and they don't make a civilian version. The civilian version is the F-7C, and so you can get that normally. So it might be that this doesn't actually apply to that many ships. But I do wonder how many ships they are going to come up with some kind of rules like that. Like, oh, this is a special ship. This is this kind of ship. This is that kind of ship. How many pirate ships will there be in game? Like those old ones I showed you. Visual teaser, Squadron 42. Are most of the ships military in the game? A lot of them are, but not necessarily made for the military. They're like made and the military uses them. But then there's also ships like these. So these might not be ships that are viable. And maybe you can only find them in the game. Maybe they're only salvage. Okay, these are specifically earnable through doing specific role missions for pirates. So there are going to be probably some things that aren't straightforward acquirable in game, but are still able to be gotten with cash and vice versa. And I don't know. I guess everybody's going to have their own feelings about whether or not that is right. I definitely think that there should be things that you get in game, not just through buying from money. At the end of the day, you'll probably be able to buy it from another player for money anyways, but having stuff that you can get specifically from earning through doing something unique is pretty cool. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with the Second Life resource thing. High-tech Drake ships, dude. These are the F1 models. Good stuff. Look at that, dude. Look at that fillet on the top. Check out them nice flanges. The Super Hornet is marketed as a civilian variant closest to the F-7A, so it isn't military per se. Right. You just think the ones they have on there at the moment, some of them have been out for 6 months and are only earnable. I think until there are more ways to earn them, they should probably also just be purchasable through AUEC. But man, what a weird, and it's a strange time to talk about earning stuff in game in Star Citizen, because it's like, on one hand, any addition to this kind of movement is good for the game, but on the other hand, people are playing this game pretty regularly as their main game, so it would be nice if they did things that they could to make it a little easier for those folks. I digress. There's your in-game earnable stuff. If there was a variant that was only earnable, sure, but the whole Guardian is locked down and a super civilian. Aren't there 2 Guardians? The old one's not available yet? Don't mind getting things in game as long as it's reasonable or it's not RNG like Wicklow was until recently, until this week. Basically still is. In 1.0, we should be getting blueprints for all account-bound items so we can craft them again if they get lost. Dude, that's blueprints, huh? Love the back and forth and overall, and got a cautious optimist vibe from both of you. Am I reading it correctly? Yeah, chill videos, you got it. I mean, we're both pretty satisfied with the overall progress of where the game is going, and feel like they are doing a good job of getting playability up this year, but they do need to kind of pick things up just based on taking a couple steps back in FPS lately and needing to get more mission content out to folks. Pretty standard, I think, pretty neutral take. I gotta comment on it. It said, streamers are never happy with CIG. To which I answered, £10.42 doesn't stream. All right? Get it right. Get it straight. Are we getting the monthly report this week or next? Probably we will get it next week. Usually, if the month starts on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, we don't get the monthly report until the following week. I mean, he has streamed before, but he's not a streamer. If you call anybody who's ever turned a stream on a streamer, then you're gonna run into a whole bunch of weird scenarios when you say every streamer is unhappy with something. No, I mean, my point being, you can't generalize the heck out of all of the people if you don't actually listen to the podcast episode, right? CIG has put themselves in a tough situation by crowdfunding from the public, keeping players happy while fixing bugs that they ignored for too long, focusing on content. To be honest, I think that they ignored the bugs and the content. We weren't getting content either. They were just doing features when they could. I think they do a good job juggling, though. It seems they lean a bit too much on the content side. I mean, from my opinion, I think they let content sit stagnant for too long. And it's good that they're kind of front loading it this year, as long as they're also making sure the game is playable. Because we're going to get back to another point of time where they turn back to features. And I don't know if they can guarantee the content being good as well. Your streamer, your last stream was last year. Last stream before that was like 3 years ago. Okay. So then, as long as you put out another stream in 2 years, you're consistent. That's all it takes, man. That's what YouTube loves. All right. You guys know the lore of the different planets in the star system? I've done a few different videos where we go and tour them in game, but I kind of wanted to just go and look at the lore of each planet and then show you guys the video that introduces said planet. Because they've got some interesting lore to them. And I think they're going to start doubling down on them a little bit more now that they're bringing the NPCs with voice lines in. Just when you say content, you struggle with what you call content. I see your point.
Spacet
Different for
34
everybody.
2, Spacet 34 MA, Spacet 34 Toes, Spacet 34 Gang.
Spacet 34 toes, Spacet 34 gang. What is going on with the internet today? Are you guys losing frames right now? I'm having a serious slowdown in internet speed. Which never makes me feel good. Arctic Wolf, you know a bit? What's up with the new Lego armor? Is it supposed to be some inside joke that I don't know about? Lego armor. Talking about this one. Because it's a little blocky on the shoulders. Got like a blocky sort of shape to it. Don't think it's an inside joke. I'm not laughing. You see me laughing. Jolie, sounds fine to you? Cool. Wildcat, thank you for the sub, by the way. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys on Twitch. It means a lot. Especially on the last day of the month. Similar to that one you saw, but it looked way worse than this. Maybe it was like a glitched version or something? I don't know. No idea. That is, though, that is the armor that they brought back from... EK, my dude! Oh my god, can we get a... This guy. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, Toes Gang. Coming out. Appreciate you, my guy. Thank you so much, PK, for dropping 10 subs for the good folks of Twitch. I just say again that I did release a new video for you guys. If you got a sub, we added a new command, ! exclusive, if you want to bring the link up to go find that video. But I wasn't here for that. What was I here for? Oh. Roberto Space Industries. Someone said the new Strata armor is based off some 90s mecha anime. I wouldn't put it past him. Sorry guys, I'm really struggling to remember why the heck I'm even here. Oh! Dress to Kill.
Actions. This damage mitigation to match.
This is the armor, right?
For distinct use cases. Currently, we realize right now bigger is generally better when it comes to FPS armor, and we know that shouldn't always necessarily be the case. There will be some armors that won't have EVA thrusters built into the suit, so you lose EVA capability. Some armors won't even be space-worthy. Specializations means getting better at certain things at the cost of attributes and others. This is about compelling you, the player, to make tactical decisions for every situation you may find yourself in. So now let's look at some practical use.
That gets worse as you age. Dude, I've been saying that since I was like freaking knee-high to a dingo. I believe, yeah, this is it. That looks like the helmet. I wish it was bare like this though, dude. Leave my butt exposed. Yas. This is just one of the armors that they introduced back in CitizenCon. Unfortunately, the rest of this stuff... Actually, we've gotten a few of these too. We've gotten this one. We got this one, I believe. I don't know if we've gotten this yet. Clearly, they are just going through the lineup, though, of these first sets of armor that they showed off last year. I think they actually showed off the... Oh, yeah, we got that pilot suit, and I believe they showed off the helmet of the sniper. This helmet, they dropped a sneak peek of it too. Sometimes you gotta let the booty breathe. Are you asking for the permission to fart? Iris. You just... All right, you guys want to learn more about Squadron 42? Oh boy. This is going to be a bit of a long one, friends. So if you clicked on this, thank you for joining. We're going to take a look at Squadron 42. Back when they thought the game, I don't know what they were thinking, but they started releasing videos. Kind of, imagine the, what were those called? The cyberpunk... What were the things that they were releasing? No, not say, just the dog. These deep dive videos that Cyberpunk was doing. Remember these were coming out like 14 minutes, 15 minutes. They would go into like different parts of the game. Yeah, so expand that out to an hour and a half. And you'll have the Squadron 42 version of it. Where did it even go? I left it behind. And really, it was meant to be a mixture of developer interviews to talk about what we're looking at, but also a show of the actual game. So this is looking at one of the main levels in the game, and it's like a very detailed walkthrough. You can see here, this is a full hour of them just walking through these locations, explaining why they are designed the way they are, how the game is supposed to play using these locations, how dialogue works, all that kind of stuff. And my friend Lycos, supporter on the Discord, shout out my man, he pointed out that this was actually a really interesting watch nowadays with Squadron 42 being a little closer to release and seeing more of the gameplay. We can add more context to this. So I'm going to let it play. Obviously, I'll be jumping in and interrupting very annoyingly. But I'll try and give you guys plenty of time to just sit back, enjoy the message, and learn a little bit more about Squadron 42. Thanks for joining me.
From the very start, Chris's remit was. He wanted it believable.
The whole focus, obviously, is just on maximum immersion.
A lot of assets are kind of unique and locations are unique. Everything really is different.
Welcome to the briefing room.
Yeah, this will definitely
focused on.
This will absolutely still be in Squadron 42. This is like a super important asset to the story itself. It's like a giant abandoned comms array. So, something I forgot to mention, these will continue. They released these with the expectation that they would keep doing them up to the release of the game. That was the parallel with the Cyberpunk thing. And they put it off because the game wasn't coming out anytime soon. So I do definitely believe that these will start back up. I would guess towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, they'd probably do like 3 or 4 of these with a couple of months in between as they start off the marketing for Squadron 42. They might be recording these right now, for all we know, getting them produced and ready to start going out next year. So expect more of this kind of stuff on Squadron. And yeah.
Welcome to the briefing room, a show fully focused on Squadron 42. I'm Brian Chambers, the VP of Development here at CIG. And today I'm joined by Nick and Ross. So welcome, guys. Good to have you on the call. Can you guys introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure, yep. I'm Nick Elms, and I'm the creative director on Squadron 42.
And I'm Ross Wilding. I'm the lead level designer on Squadron 42.
For those that don't
know, on Squadron 42.
This guy, Nick Elms, this guy gets referenced quite a bit when talking about Star Citizen development. I think generally by like Rich and Jared, folks that are higher up in the company.
Sure, yep. I'm Nick Elms. And
for those that don't know, and because it's a little complex on the design side, can you give a high level breakdown of the design team and how that's made up for Squadron?
The Squadron 42 design team split into 3 actually. It's three teams that work very closely with each other. First being Ross's team, the FPS team. which works predominantly on the ground and gravity base areas where combat and exploration are a focus.
All the
Then we've got
pew-pews. All the pew-pews?
Yes, that's all the pew-pew stuff is down to Ross.
Cool.
The flight team work on the sort of space sections of the game, as you might expect. That includes like dogfighting, exploration, landing, takeoff, all those kind of stuff. Obviously, working very closely with the various AI feature teams as well. And then finally, we've got the social team, and they're kind of the glue for all the narrative elements of the game. Building the interactive experience, presenting it to the player cinematically with focus on maximum immersion, as Chris has sort of called out.
Absolutely, and those guys, social team's been everyone's been busy, but the social team I know has put a lot of effort into how you're interacting with. Yeah,
absolutely, and hopefully we'll hear a bit about that later on. But they've had a lot of new tech and things recently to support them, which has been great.
Awesome. So Ross, I know you and the team made some really good progress on Asiato recently. I keep seeing the updates and hearing more and more. So I know we gave you some advance notice and you prepped some stuff to show off. So I thought maybe you could jump into it and let's see what you got.
Freaking love an Asiato.
This is a decommissioned communication station which is set inside the Odin system, which is where 90% of episode 1 takes place. We actually visit this location very early on in the game, and
key context there. If you go back and look at where the gameplay that we know about takes place, we'll get there at some point. Dude, what is going on with this feed? Why does it keep repeating itself? I couldn't scroll back in history. What's going on? I'm stuck in a loop. It's showing me the same videos over and over. Chris, what have you done? Dear sweet baby Jesus, Squadron 42, soon TM. All right, here we go. Now, if you go back to the gameplay where they show us the bagpipes and the things and all the noise, yay! Super happy. Very fun. Favorites. Ta-da! They're not in Odin. They're in Vega. So if you don't know the Squadron 42 story, I'm sorry if this is pointing out an obvious spoiler, but clearly something happens that takes you out of Vega and sends you to Odin for 90% of the game.
Episode 1 takes place. We actually visit this location very early on in the game, and it's probably one of the first times the player gets to kind of be let loose, essentially, and kind of have a bit of freedom. And for this reason, we've decided to basically keep this station quite small. It's actually one of the smallest locations we visit in the entire game. Not to say that it is small, because we'll show a little bit more of that in a little bit.
Look forward to it. Let's dig in.
So one of the first things we started when looking at Asiato is we wanted to kind of establish its identity. So as you can see here, this is a very early kind of block out of the exterior, which as you can see looks like a satellite dish. And this was something that actually came up in one of the early meetings. And part of this was because it gives us that kind of recognizable shape.
Very Mass Effect Citadel vibes. Sorry to say.
The other benefit of it, as I've kind of mentioned, is Asiato is a very early section in the game. We wanted the player to kind of have this kind of sandboxy kind of approach. One of the things that this really helps us do is the cylindrical shape means that we can kind of approach it at any angle. So once we'd basically kind of finished like planning what the kind of shape was and what the style of the facility was, we basically started focusing on the interior section. And one of the things that's really important to us as when we're designing these levels is the functionality and the believability of the space. So even though we are a sci-fi game, we're obviously trying to make these spaces like seem as realistic as possible. And one of the ways we do that is we look at a lot of locations in real world spaces and kind of try to find the identity of what this would be, and then basically kind of convert that. Obviously we kind of take some kind of creative license with certain things and kind of change things up a little bit and add like more sci-fi kind of architecture to things, but it's still very much about the believability and the functionality, which we'll kind of dig down into a little bit more. So the first thing that we actually started looking at was kind of the main functionality of the space. And as we kind of said, it's a decommissioned communication center. So mission control was kind of like a key area for this space. So you can see on this map, we've kind of got like a few of the different locations kind of called out. And what we kind of did is we kind of focused on the key areas first. And then once we kind of established those, we started to kind of figure out what other spaces would be in here. So obviously we've kind of got this nice skywalk that kind of goes around partway. And again, this kind of like brings us back to the whole trying to encourage the player to be able to go and explore this space in different directions. So you
What's up, Throbbing? Whiskey?
There are different entrances. Sometimes you could go left, sometimes you go right. You can go through the middle. You can go up to the higher floors, down into the basement.
Yeah.
And
it's a little telling of Squadron's design. We still don't know how this game, what we saw in in the CitizenCon last year, was so scripted. I don't think there was a single step out of the path that you could take that wouldn't, like maybe during the EVA section, and mostly just that, I think. I just don't feel like there was really anywhere in that demo you could tell what the rest of the game looked like. This is some of the best input we've gotten as to how levels will even play out. But I am glad to hear that they're trying to design at least some of the locations to feel a little bit more open to progress through. I'm a huge fan of Deus Ex, all of them. Maybe not Invisible War, but most of them. And I like choice.
you can actually see we have a few different shots of this for basically different floors of the station.
How different can it be?
And then we basically come to looking at some of the other areas that were initially less important to the space, but we felt would really help with the identity. So this, for example, is an early kind of blockout screenshot of the habitation area. So the idea being in here, this would actually be like where the kind of habitation pods are stored. And you can imagine it almost like, I guess like a beehive, where it's basically these things are kind of plugged into the sides, and each person kind of lives inside one of these. And I'm just kind of looking actually if... No, so we've got some...
That sounds
this is
miserable.
Another kind of screenshot of the habitation section, but actually on the outside, so the more kind of living quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is just another shot from there.
Thank you very much.
Yep, so...
Shifty! Almost Squadron 42 months. Almost, dude. Wow. Thanks for being here 42 months and counting. Like, well, 41 months and counting. Wouldn't it be cool if Squadron 42 came out on the month you hit 42? Is that too much to wish for?
The thing I was actually looking for, and I'll come back to a couple of these in a second, I suppose, but was actually these are the habitation pods, basically.
Bro, no! That's too much like the college dorm rooms we lived in. Maybe with a little more color, though.
So if you imagine back on that previous shot, this is actually what would be kind of fixed into those locations. So if I kind of click back to it a second, you can kind of see that these would nicely fit into these locations.
Yeah. And the area is expandable as well, isn't it? You can add another one underneath if you had more need for habitation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and again, that's the kind of idea of us kind of drilling down into the functionality of these spaces is that this is kind of interchangeable, and we can kind of like if this space suddenly needed like more personnel to come and work there, they could basically extend the size of this quite easily.
It's like everything starts, and it's all sort of fully realised. You know, all the locations and things. They're not just a straight sort of shooter map.
Yeah, that looks like how this corporation would have us sleeping.
This is one of the things that we're kind of driving at, is that a lot of what we want to do in Squadron is have a lot of kind of exploration and kind of feel like you're basically behaving how...
He said the E word, guys.
How you would behave in these locations, as opposed to just, this is a game, I'm obviously going to go in, kill some guys and kind of get to the objective. Like I'm just going down a corridor, I'm looking for where the objective marker is taking me. We really wanted it so players can kind of start to explore these spaces and kind of see how people were living.
As you guys are blocking the spaces out, do you guys, once you get it in that rough state, are you actually going in an editor and running around in it to see how it feels at as far as scale and distances and so on at that point?
Yes, so we're doing that all the time. So despite like kind of what we're saying is obviously function is a very important thing for us in these blockouts. Another aspect is obviously making sure that it still feels good to kind of traverse and that we're kind of sticking to all the metrics and stuff, because the last thing we want is to kind of have it make lots of sense but then not be enjoyable. So it's always like kind of, it takes a lot of time to kind of get that nice balance.
Yeah, and I guess another cog in that balance too is, we have an idea of what intended gameplay could be there, right? Because there's not always a straight line. It's not always we need you to do A or B. You could do a multitude of things to get through in what you need, but you also have to think about the layout and the design and what that gameplay means and the choices the player can make. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also got, you know, the things that the stimulus that the AI are going to react to anything as well in here. So if you're in an area where there's no lights, you suddenly switch the lights on, then, you know, you could draw the attention of the AI, and that all that kind of stuff is planned at this stage as well.
Okay, Sam Fisher.
Yeah, and that's something we can kind of dig into in a little bit, where we basically talk about how we want as much of these environments to be interactive as possible. So we're basically going through them, and you see like terminals and consoles. You should be able to kind of interact with them and kind of, you know, read the stuff in there, or you know, obviously a lot of the things are going to be kind of physicalized in there, so you can kind of pick them up, throw them around, move them about, do that sort of thing. And all those again will kind of feed back into the kind of sandbox nature of the game. So, you know, like if there's enemies in these spaces, you can actually use them to kind of distract enemies, or, you know, even use them as cover and that sort of thing. So
stealth kill and drag the body away, so you don't get seen.
Yeah. So this screen,
it's solid. It's not a typical FPS experience. It's so weird to like. Game is so weird. Like we're doing a preview of Squadron 42, but there's not a single spaceship involved.
Screenshot we're currently on, again, is just kind of covering some of the high level blockout stuff, is just us kind of showing that we've kind of got this like skywalk that goes around the outside, and then we also kind of have like the routes into the central section, which is where the mission control is, and the server racks and the gravity drive. But we're also kind of thinking about other ways that the player can kind of go into these locations. So this just kind of shows, as you can see, we've got like these little storage rooms on the side that lead between, but we've also kind of got these like ventilation systems that feed around the station. And the player can actually go into these and then kind of, you know, get like visibility on other areas and kind of, again, kind of promote a little bit more stealth gameplay if they want to kind of take that approach.
I guess that would tell me too that not all of, you know, those traversal points may be straight in the player's face, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we do actually have some that are kind of like effectively what is our like main route, or what we kind of craft as our kind of like what we call a golden path. But the idea being that there are kind of like lots of routes, and we like the idea that, you know, a lot of players won't even know some of these exist until they either see a video online or someone else, you know, accidentally stumbles across something. And that's what we want to kind of put into these levels, is as much kind of variety and kind of stuff that kind of keeps figuring out and like learning new things as you're kind of playing it. And again,
can you do too much of that? Can they put too many things, too many choices that the level feels not good? Have you ever played a game that does that?
Giving more kind of replay options.
Cool.
So moving on to some of the next images we have, this is when we basically started to get art a lot more involved. So we'd established what the kind of space was, what the point of it was. We obviously know what the intended kind of gameplay is for this space. So at this point, we kind of talk to art and kind of say, like, this is what we want. How do we kind of portray that? So here you can see like one screenshot, like a kind of piece of concept art. You can obviously see like a few different doors, and why this is obviously important is because it also kind of gives us the identity and the architecture of the space, which aside from the obvious, from the branding perspective, we also do this because the architecture will obviously play an important part in the blockout as well. So if the walls aren't straight, for example, that obviously affects lines of sight, that you know, the kind of how you kind of feed into different routes.
Certainly having a window in the door affects things as well.
Exactly, yeah. So you can just kind of see the two here.
To that point, I've actually found that it's incredibly interesting when you look at different levels and different manufacturers and so on throughout the game. And to that point, with the different architecture and the style, right? It lends itself to have a certain feel within certain areas, which then lends itself to even certain types of gameplay and so on. So it's cool to see the spread that's out there and the level of detail and attention that's put to each thing, even like, you know, the Habs architecture matching, the doors and so on.
I was going to say, it's interesting, the Asiado, it also sort of manufactures some of the comms relays in the Odin system as well, and you kind of got that architecture echoing through those, obviously in a sort of scaled down state, because those things are largely unmanned apart from, the odd engineer. So yeah, like you said, the manufacturers play a big part in this.
Yeah, and another thing as well is like the architecture is very important, just because, like, for example, with Asiado, it's obviously a cylindrical shape. So what this also means is, like, what you can do in the game is you can obviously go to a terminal and you can actually download map schematics to your mobiGlas. But if, say, you didn't know to do that, or you didn't want to do that, you obviously want to kind of encourage like little kind of things in the environment that encourage the player to kind of figure out where to go, or kind of try and figure out where they are in the space. So
it makes sense that downloadable maps would be in Squadron 42, but I hadn't really considered that. That would explain why they had a model of that working just to show off at CitizenCon 2023. They're probably getting it working for Squadron 42. Weird they don't show ship combat more, but maybe beyond opening chapter they get way more spoilery, or they want to show that last so it looks more crisp. I think they just only wanted to show a level. I didn't think they wanted to show any gameplay here. In fact, I doubt they had good gameplay to show at this point. It's 2020, man.
Having this kind of cylindrical shape that almost like gets like the left wall or the inside wall is always the smaller of the two. That certainly helps us kind of like establish this sort of stuff. And when we also look at the branding as well, we actually have several locations across the game where they are, kind of like they're different locations, but they're branded by the same kind of company. So it helps us kind of identify certain elements as well, and kind of give like level of familiarity to certain things. So here we just have some more concepts, this time of the kind of the controls and the terminals, like again with Asiado being a communication center, the mission control stuff was very important to us. So this was one of the very early kind of concepts that we did. Here you can start to see like very early 3D versions of them, which were actually placed into our environments. And this is kind of like somewhere between like early white box and kind of moving towards like art having their first pass on the space.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can just kind of see a bit more of this. You can clearly see obviously the lighting outside has had a bit more attention at this point. Again, a few more consoles, just kind of showing there.
I feel like they do a good job on design language. There's no fiction that I look at. Now, I don't know all the fictions. I don't have them on my hand. I can't remember everything. But I don't see this and think to myself, oh, that looks like so-and-so. Looks kind of like a combination of different things. But the assets look good. Squadron 42's assets in general always seem to look a little nicer than Star Citizen's. That could be just because of polish and the finish that it needs, but I hope that Star Citizen looks like Squadron at some point. I think a lot of the Squadron gameplay will take place on ships, but we won't necessarily be doing a ton of ship combat, kind of like Mass Effect. You think so? I figured the majority of the game would be focused around ship combat. I think people would be pretty disappointed if it ended up being more about being on the ships but not controlling them. Turrets and stuff. I hope it's a general balance of everything. I think that's a safe bet. But I do agree that I think as the game has become more focused on a larger and larger audience, they are probably going to shy more and more away from straight ship flying and ship combat.
Outside has had a bit more attention at this point. Again, a few more consoles, just kind of showing their relationship into the actual space. And then here we can kind of see that once we've kind of established kind of like the main kind of architecture for certain things, one of the things Art will go away and do is start to kind of build like kit pieces, what you can see here. So these are like essentially pieces of corridor or like strips and doorways and stuff that we can then take and kind of like go over our white box sections and basically build them to have more of an identity to them. So when we actually go into our spaces, we do obviously try to consider the shape and the architecture as much as possible very early on. But once Art kind of come in and give us that initial pass as well, we very instantly see like the shape and the identity of the space really come to life, basically. So finally, we have this this comparison that kind of shows like blockouts of the initial space, and then ultimately what they've turned into in the final version, or at least our final art pass. As you can see in some of these sections, the final art is very true to the original blockout, which is obviously something we tried to do, because once it's in blockout, we're obviously testing it a lot. We're kind of playing certain areas and seeing if things work, puzzles kind of make sense. So
it's a freaking cool room, man. This is easy enough to find in other references, just to emphasize how much they're using this location. If you look for their 0G push and pull demonstration between Chris and Rich, I believe this is CitizenCon 2022, maybe.
The floor, we're going to activate it.
You can see
up now, grab
they're in the same location.
We've hyped this. You don't have to worry about that because, let's play the video.
See the video.
Let's play the video there, and
we've hyped this up now. Hover trailers are the most amazing thing in the world. Here we go.
You can see it's the Asiato place in the background there.
Or whatever we do eventually.
Some more looks at the inside of the space, but then there's a really good one too.
We've actually had this working on a planet, so you can just push this over planet terrain. You don't let go. You stay stable, because it doesn't actually undulate unless there's something actually physically touching it. So it allows it to be much more stable. And what we want to do for your cargo loading is that we'll use a system similar to the cargo grid that you'll be able to snap things on top of it. So if you have a flat platform, you'll be able to snap.
Here we go.
One of them, obviously, the Asiato. It's
that's literally the room that we're looking at in the other video.
But it's not just for Squadron. It's going to be, it's obviously useful in some of the environments of Squadron. This is one of them, obviously, the Asiato station. You're going to look down on the slavers that you saw in the earlier scan. But the use of this in the PU is going to be massive.
And also the big thing that Chris said there is it's systemic.
Kind of crazy how many of these features that are like this that you just know are being made and polished super hardcore for Squadron 42, and we're just not seeing in Star Citizen.
As we're doing that, if we went out to the third person here, you would sort of see.
I mean, this is push and pull.
Around. I think we'll see it
gameplay
later on.
Years ago.
There we go. Here we go. So we're just sort of pulling ourselves along.
It just goes to show that either the effort to put it in Star Citizen is not worth it, or god dang, it's a lot of effort, or porque lo nos dos. But
if we wanted to at this point, we could stop and we could push off against it, and then we would just go floating out into space. So that's the sort of idea of what we call push-pull.
And so what you're seeing here,
he just pushed himself off.
So what you're seeing here, that's actually kind of you're just floating alongside the actual this fin of this Asiato station, and this is actually keeping you in this orbit. And then if you did, and that's just, you just push forward and go, where you can actually jump off into space. But then this becomes one of the, if you look at physical traversal, where you've got jumping and mantling and vaulting, this is where we have 0G push-pull.
So yeah, same location, it keeps popping up.
Kind of trying to trace over that as much as possible is quite an important factor for us, because we can kind of get a good feeling for how it's going to play before we kind of sink too much art and resource time into the final version. So yeah, you can kind of see here that this, up until this point, is very kind of close to what we actually had.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing the main shapes, if you will, still exist, and then with that next pass, getting that further level of detail, you get more of the visual identity that's in there. You get more of the sense of how the space will feel, per se, with adding color and lighting and atmosphere and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job. Like this reminds me of another game I've played recently. can't remember what game it is. It might have been Jedi Survivor. But I was just in a sort of like an abandoned location. It was kind of sci-fi, like it was a old facility or something. And it had multiple levels and glass walls that were kind of lining the walkways and stuff. And this reminds me of that, but this looks, this has such a, it really hits the decommissioned spaceship look, space station look. It doesn't look like it's been abandoned, but it does look like it's no longer in official use. I don't know, I really like the way this
color
environment
and
looks.
lighting and atmosphere and so on.
I
Exactly.
mean, we have super regular syncs with the art guys, obviously. The designers work sort of very closely with the art team.
Yeah, and the again, like the lighting plays a huge part. Like, so in some cases, these are actually, there's not much more art detail in the final version. It's just a lot of it is kind of done with lighting as well, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So something you can kind of see in like the second half of this video actually is that not all locations are kind of like as true to the blockout in the final version. And part of this is because for one reason or another, as we've kind of tested stuff, we've just felt that it wasn't quite right, and we've wanted to kind of change it and address certain features. So you can see here, for example, the initial blockout space was quite wide, and we wanted to kind of funnel the player and try and encourage them a little bit less to use this main route and perhaps use more of a kind of stealthy approach if they wanted to enter the space, which we're kind of moving into now. And again, you can kind of see that this space is quite claustrophobic,
There's a dead body.
quite mechanical heavy, and then in the
Totally
final
stealth.
version, we've opened it up to kind of have like light from outside kind of filter in a little bit more and just kind of make it a bit more breathable, basically.
Now, when some of those decisions are made, then I know it's an iterative process, but it's about getting in and reviewing and understanding what the main goals are and looking at the architecture and the mood and the lighting and all those things coming together.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that's a large combination of it. And in some cases, as I said, it's kind of gameplay driven, and the fact that it's like, oh, well, this doesn't actually work for what we hoped, in which case we'll go in and we'll change it. And in other cases, it's just we've blocked something out, and it, like, again, when we're kind of doing it very early on, like the art guys have gone in there, they've obviously got a lot more reference material and stuff, so there'll be some cases where like a shape just doesn't quite work for a believable space, and in those cases we basically say, okay, well, we need to change the layout a little bit to kind of accommodate.
Yeah, narratively, we pretty much cater for what the player does as well. So if the player goes in there all guns blazing, then the whole base is going to be on alert. If you go stealthy, then maybe you get to pick up tidbits of information here and there, especially if you're in like a crawl space or something like that.
Yeah. No, that's really cool seeing.
That's way more in-depth kind of details than I think most people would imagine for a first-person military game based on Star Citizen's universe. Myself included, I think a lot of people are thinking this is mainly about ship combat, and like the idea that you can maybe stealth and get additional information for missions or go in directions that other people might not doesn't mean the whole story changes, but if each mission can play out a little bit differently based on your specific approach, that's nice. Might not be the most replayability, but it means you get a unique experience.
That gives everyone a glimpse of kind of the history of it, right? And I do remember seeing early sketches, I think, on a whiteboard on paper of what it could look like, and it was very close to that first satellite image that you showed.
Yeah, so I think obviously we've kind of shown a little bit of the kind of early stuff. So I think what we can actually do now is bring up the level in the editor. Okay, so this is basically Asiado inside the editor. As you can kind of see, where it's based in the Odin system, we've got a nice backdrop of the coil over here. And again, you can kind of see, as we kind of approach it a little bit more, the kind of satellite dish style that we were going for. So right now, the petals are kind of like tucked into each other, but I believe these can all actually fold out.
Wait, are we going in live?
We're going in live, yeah.
We're going in live, okay. Hold on, Nick.
Going into the Citadel.
No, that's cool.
So,
it's awesome.
So one of the things before I actually drop into the actual lower levels is I wanted to kind of show a little bit of on the top of the dish, essentially. So something we'll kind of get into in a little bit in a minute is the a lot of the entrances, or most of the entrances we've kind of designed, are on the underside of the dish, and this was a kind of conscious choice that we made because I believe in the blockout video we showed slightly earlier, we actually had like this crow's nest, for example, with a hidden entrance in the top that would allow you to come down. But we felt it was just a little bit too obscure and a little bit out of the way, so we basically removed it and kind of changed that location. But something that's really kind of cool in these this location is basically you could actually get out of your ship at this point. You could obviously EVA up close to these windows, and you would actually see like the AI kind of walking around in here, and you could kind of like move around, plot kind of where some of these enemies are, and then just basically figure out how you're going to tackle this situation. You could do that, yeah.
Show a little
again,
happy face if it's foggy outside,
Yep.
Yeah. Just
Foggy?
breathe on the glass and then dive because you realise you've not got your helmet on. So. So the main kind of aspect of this is the underside, essentially, of Asiado. So you can kind of, again, see the sort of circular nature of the shape of the space. And again, the player has kind of like, they can get out of their ship, they can fly their ship around here, they have like full freedom to kind of explore this place as they want to. One of the things we wanted to kind of do is have like a few kind of key entrances. So the thing that we will kind of call out as part of the mission flow is the hangar. And that's kind of like what we're kind of drafting as the main entrance into this space, and that's also how typically people using this space would enter and exit this area. But we also have a couple of extra...
Maybe not the best route if you're going to go the stealth way.
No, well, exactly, yeah. So obviously when we kind of go into the hangar, we would have kind of enemies or like characters in there just kind of loading up vehicles and kind of, like, flying them in and out. So if you're trying to avoid being kind of spotted in this space, then like I said, going into the hangar isn't really a good option.
Yeah.
So one of the locations we actually do have, and I'll slow down the movement a little bit, is this. So as I kind of mentioned previously, we have we had the crow's nest, which didn't really work, especially because it was so long. So we actually now have this kind of mini, I suppose it's like a reverse crow's nest, but you can actually fly up here, and again, you kind of like a little door. Come inside. We have an airlock.
An EVA, you're spacewalking, aren't you? At that point, you've left your ship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this would all be an EVA. You would come into here. You would cycle the air and the gravity. At this point, you could kind of then enter into this space, which basically brings us into the server room. So we'll come back to this space, but for now, I wanted to kind of zoom back out, and I wanted to show the habitation area. So when we were kind of looking at the blockout images before, you could kind of see this sort of space, and like I said, the kind of honeycomb beehive shape. If we kind of fly in, again, I'll lower my movement. We kind of look down into this space now. You can kind of see that it's obviously all been arted up, and there's a bunch of these that are kind of, some are closed and kind of sealed up for the outside, so that they're saying that there may not be habitation pods attached at this point, but additional ones could be added at any time, and then the doors are opened up. And then we also have some that are actually in here, and we actually have, like people starting to kind of have like their personal effects and so on, and we can kind of see if we zoom in a little bit, try and get the camera up nice and close. No. You can kind of see almost like people's kind of like staff rotors and stuff, and to an extent, like
meal on the side.
Yep. So,
but it is.
Again,
I mean, it's a good thing to point out to to that level. We build things that have functionality, right? So as you guys are building this from the ground up, the screens, the consoles, and so on, they serve a purpose. Majority of them can be interactable. There'll be cause and effect. You'll push. Yeah.
Everything. I mean, like the gravity room that Ross sort of touched on before. Any structure like this, it's got gravity in it. It'll have a generator. You can potentially go down. Switch it off, whatever, and there's cause and effect. It's like everything in the game.
Feels like
it's all, sort of based on.
Feels like the bed sheets controversy when that when they put in the monthly report that they had worked on the physics of bed sheets when the AI was interacting with the bed. This feels like the same kind of a detail where if they had put like a notes thing down and they were like, we built the schedule, we've created the physical schedule for the NPCs and this space station and what they would be doing at specific time, people would have been that. I feel like that would have been the same energy because it's a cool touch. It's way out there. Makes you wonder how airlocks are supposed to work on all these ships. They don't have cycling options.
Like this, it's got gravity in it. It'll have a generator. You can potentially go down. Switch it off, whatever, and there's cause and effect. It's like everything in the game. It's all sort of based on a sort of reality that we have for Star Citizen.
Yeah, we've even got like post-it notes in there. Maybe these are like codes for lock safes or something that we have lying around, or maybe they're just
that's some like artist's personal pin code or hidden message, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
very likely
the password for the mainframe.
Secret Morse code.
Yo, this actually reminds me of the gigantic thingy-majigger in Total Recall. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. Total Recall. Where the giant thing falls through the planet to the other side. And it's like really, really tall. And it's got a whole bunch of hallways going around the outside of it. And they're all on different levels. And I think it's Jessica Biel and Colin Farrell. Somebody else. Kate Beckinsale.
That's
this
some
look kind of like
artist's personal pin code or hidden message, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
very likely.
Secret Morse code.
Yeah, the new one, the new Total Recall. Exactly.
So now I just have to try and remember which is the right door out of here. So I think it's this one.
This also, dude. I said earlier, no IP really drags me, but I do keep getting reminders of several at the same time. Mostly Mass Effect, Star Wars, and Alien. I get the feels for. It's such a great combo.
So now I just have to try and remember which is the right door out of here.
Alien in 2001.
So
yeah, that's a good
one.
call. 2001, definitely.
Yep. So this kind of brings us out into the main kind of living quarters of the station. So again, like they would kind of sleep in those pods, and they would obviously kind of socialize and kind of have like meals and stuff in other areas, because as you can kind of tell, the habitation pods aren't very big. Maybe obviously if people want quiet time and stuff, but for the most part, I would kind of expect people to kind of come into these mess halls. And again, you can start to see that, as you said, kind of half-eaten meals, or kind of people have been prepping stuff and it's been kind of abandoned. So
there's
one
no
of the things,
table with blood on
just
it
looking
from
at their
xenomorph or anything.
I love the brochure for the Crusader Mercury Star Runner here on the table. Just out here at your communications station, imagining that spaceship that you're going to fly when you get home.
That's come out of anyone's chest or anything, I hope.
No, nothing like that just yet, but
not yet.
You never know. And one of the things, like right now, obviously a lot of these props are just kind of like placed in there, but we imagine that when players kind of come into these spaces, that a lot of these things will be kind of physical.
Vomit, maybe? What's in that bowl?
And you can actually pick them up, obviously. Yeah. Throw things around the room. There'll obviously be certain things to kind of interact with, things to read. You can kind of see over here, like people have been playing cards. I'm sure you could obviously pick the cards up and the baseball bat and so on. Let's see where this leads us. So basically, once we kind of come away from the habitation, we start to move in towards what is essentially the skywalk. And I'll actually take this route. So we kind of saw some of this in the video very early on.
I think I'm slowly losing what I said earlier about it not reminding me of stuff. I feel like I could see the sequel of Alien Isolation take place in this. And that might not be because it's all design language. It's just, it's got that feeling of decommissioned space station or spaceship. And obviously the padding on the walls and a couple of the design cues definitely calls back to Alien, but what a great game that was.
And as you can see, it's, it does look very clean, and there's obviously some stuff that's been kind of stacked up here. One of the things we're still kind of in the process of doing is kind of adding dressing to some of these elements, so you can kind of see we will be kind of adding more kind of elements into these rooms and spaces, and part of that is something that will change and it will be an ongoing process, very close until release. And that's because basically we'll be in here, we'll obviously be working, we'll have AI like running around and going into combat, and we want to kind of get the balance right, so there's a nice kind of level between these.
This is all traversable by the player right now, yeah?
Yeah, so like I said, this is obviously an editor, so if I hit Control G, for example, I'm actually in game now. So again,
I take it you've switched the AI layer off, so we're not into a world of chaos.
Yeah, so
nah, man.
So right now, this is just kind of like it as it's kind of intended, like from a visual and artistic standpoint. Obviously, the level is fully traversable, doors all work and everything. So if I come down here, but one of the things, is that we're obviously.
I was gonna say, what if he stays in like the same 10-meter square?
The kind of AI is an ongoing process, and
suit lockers.
Like obviously live demoing at this point, like anything could happen. So just trying to save ourselves a little bit of pain right now from showing too much stuff, basically. But you can again kind of come into there. You can see a lot of these kind of like personal effects and things that kind of add to the kind of life of the space. I think you've got like more kind of random codes and stuff that the artists have been putting on the whiteboards. Obviously, be curious to see what's on them in the final game. But and then we kind of move it, like this is the kind of the server room, for example.
Damn.
That's kind of what I was saying before about the telecom
That's
exchanges.
so much. Like, you got to imagine that at this point in the future, a single freaking server rack like this must be like 14 quadribytes. I don't know. Like, each of these must be thousands of terabytes, right? 900 years in the future, dude, we must store the entirety of the original 2022 encyclopedia on a hard drive the size of this little freckle here. So this is a massive room. I guess it is a comms array.
Inspiration from those really look really cool, but futurized.
Yeah, and these spaces, it does look really cool. And
yo, dog. We
one
heard
of
you
the
like
other things that
servers.
we're quite keen on for a lot of these spaces, as I briefly touched on, is we want to have a lot of kind of interactables and kind of things to do in the environment. So if you imagine you're kind of sneaking through this space, and it's obviously very kind of like there are enemies in here and you're trying to avoid them because you want to take a stealth approach. Something either you could do or the AI could actually do is actually come over to one of these terminals and then kind of interact with some of the screens and then basically like get access to these server racks, and you could actually interact with them and then have them kind of lower into the floor. And suddenly what becomes like
what?
A nice place for kind of
Yeah, dude. They're building he said specifically that this area was a lot more sandbox in other parts of the game, so I'm guessing the rest of the game won't be built with this much detail. But this really does have a lot of like the 2000s, I don't want to say immersive sim. It's not all that. The game, the level design feels immersive sim a little bit. It certainly feels sandbox in its design, even while being in a mission or in a narrative environment. And I do really appreciate that. That will make this feel a lot more of a unique experience than I think I expected it to feel. Hope stuff like this comes to the PU. Same. They can just design these environments to be so engrossing and immersive because they know we're going to pass through them.
kind of sneaking around with the stealth suddenly can become totally exposed with no kind of cover.
Exactly.
And the player can kind of use that to their advantage, and equally AI can use that to the player's disadvantage. So,
oh, that would be
it's like
so
I said before.
freaking sick.
Those things will become a stimulus for AI. So even if somebody's in the room next door, they might potentially hear that and go, what the hell's going on next door?
Exactly. Yeah.
Check out.
And speaking of next door,
I guess as a player, that would, that would make me
there.
mad if I think I'm being all stealthy and I flag the AI, hear me. Next thing you know, all my cover disappears to the ground.
If you're switching heavy machinery on in the room next door,
yeah.
And this is the thing as well, is that, and this is kind of what moves into our steps as we kind of move forward towards release. Basically, is we're trying to basically get the AI to kind of do stuff that kind of feels like cool and original, and obviously like compelling to the kind of experience, but at the same time, not kind of like the player thinks they're doing okay and they're like perfectly stealthing around and then suddenly everything disappears. So if we just kind of move back into this room, for example, you know, maybe like a guy's kind of working on, let's say, the terminal that's over here. He comes over, you know, maybe he's got his back turned to you and he's kind of like he's working on here, and then he lowers just one or two of these terminals. But let's say you're kind of sneaking up behind him, and then suddenly the thing you're planning to use as backup cover disappears. It then, because he's got his back to you, it gives you a couple of seconds to kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to hide behind this one instead.
Yeah,
as
you
opposed
also
to
got
just,
plenty of sound to
or you could
assassinate his
try and
ass.
take him out quickly.
Yeah.
And this is,
Yo.
again, something that...
Your phone died, my friend. Well, welcome back.
kind of we feed into with our next kind of step, which is obviously kind of balancing the AI out and trying to find out like how much noise is too much. Because something else that we want to do is, like in this environment, for example, I would expect it to be quite noisy, like just in general. So
yeah,
we actually want it to be so that noise in an environment affects how noisy the player can be. So if you're obviously kind of in an engineering kind of space and there's loads of machinery going on around you, you would expect the player to kind of be able to walk around fairly normally and not, you know, be detected or kind of be heard. Whereas if we're kind of in a space that's like really quiet and like you can hear every footstep, we would expect the AI to kind of pay attention to you a lot easier. So it's also about reading them.
Sorry, I was going to say, even if you've blown your cover, I mean, the AI don't all sort of run after you like, you know, a football team or whatever. You know, if they know you, they'll sort of hunker down and you know, take sort of ambush places and things like that. So
they're definitely
you know,
not the
freaking
headhunters
in
then.
these spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, and that's something we'll kind of cover actually in a little bit when we talk a little bit more about the plans for the AI and stuff. But here we can actually see the gravity room, and this is basically the gravity drive that's essentially kind of powering all the gravity inside the station. And
wow.
When we're kind of talking about like interactions and stuff as well, this is quite cool because if we come into here, we can actually come to like, this is intended to be like one of the main kind of terminals for the entire station that kind of controls a lot of the power elements. And something, if I actually go this way,
ooh,
kind of move back
an opportunity for some power management stuff in there. I did wonder how applied of a engineering gameplay they might put in Squadron 42.
This space. I think the door's sealed actually because it's
the beauty of building it all on the same engine is like maybe the space station is hooked up to have power systems that you can actually mess with.
This is the airlock, so I can actually cheat, seeing as we're in editor, and kind of fly down. You can actually see that this is the kind of secret crow's nest that I was talking about earlier. So if players were to kind of sneak in this way, they can actually get like a kind of quick early access to these sections, basically. And again, if a player comes up to some of these locations and doesn't think or doesn't want to try and interact with these terminals, that's totally up to them, and that's, you know, will affect their experience. But for somebody who wants to kind of try and find out another way of doing something, like maybe you can interact with this and then you could probably shut down the power for like 90% of the station, or, you know, we're still kind of figuring out what happens with like oxygen levels and so on. So that's a potential maybe.
Yeah, the freaking,
that's cool. That just opens that
you'd have to account for so many different things with the AI and stuff.
Opens up so many different avenues as far as how you approach things and you know, again, as I was saying earlier, cause and effect, right?
Exactly.
We present these play spaces, you know, for the players, and they can sort of, you know, solve, you know, almost all of them in any way they want to within the sort of environment, you know, within the sort of systems and tools that we've spent, you know, a long time developing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where the fun part comes in towards the end of the development, where we're basically trying to, you know, all these kind of systems come together, and we're basically trying to make them work without causing infinite problems for the player.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing to sort, right? There's so many different variables that you need to balance, and some intentionally you don't balance, right? Because what stops somebody from, you know, guns blazing, going in as loud and dirty as they can versus, you know, somebody who wants to do it stealth or somebody who rides the middle? I mean, it's cool. Each one becomes its unique experience, in a sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just again kind of moving around the station as we kind of seen the skywalks earlier. So this is actually the other side, and something that I kind of talked about at the very start was the fact that Asiado was a kind of like decommissioned communication station, and obviously everything I've shown up to this point is kind of operational and kind of lights on and everything's working. So you can actually see here that this side of the station is a lot more kind of in darkness and it's kind of been left to kind of rot essentially.
I was going to say, it looks like they need a good mop in on this side, you know?
Do you?
It's cool having the tarpaulins and the sheets and things over everything as well.
Yeah, and this is something as well that helps us kind of going back to what I was saying about the AI in these spaces and kind of talking about like the player understanding where they are. So like from here, obviously aside from the fact you've got this really nice kind of vista looking outside, like just kind of looking at the shot, it's quite obvious where the middle of the station is as opposed to the outside.
Correct.
Because you've just got the kind of the smaller radius on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of decommissioned side also kind of gives us the opportunity to basically distinguish the two different sides of the walkway. So like here, for example, we can obviously, this is clearly a different side to the station from the skywalk that's in decent condition. So there are a kind of multitude of reasons for why we have things like this.
It's cool. It's really cool to see. No, it's really cool to see the progress. I haven't seen it the walkthrough to this extent for a while, and last time I did it definitely wasn't this far along.
Yeah, and like even from someone who kind of works on these levels day in day out, like you kind of forgetting a lot of times because you're working in a kind of vacuum or a bubble about the spaces that you're in.
Dude,
and
I
every
freaking love these. I can't get over these monitors. Look so good. I love the chunkiness of the whole display. Hey, Magion. How's the Tomatoes family? Doing well. Doing well, friend. How's your family? How's your people? How are you?
That you're in, and then every now and then you see something like, oh my god, this is actually really cool. Like, I mean, again, just kind of like the visuals on this, like this is kind of in editor, this is me playing it in real time, so
yeah,
it's not kind of faked in any way. It's really cool. And again, like if I just kind of fly out, like even with the character still in game, you pretty much you can see everything essentially. And just to clarify, I do have God mode on as well, so
that's all right.
That's why I'm not suddenly suffocating.
I kept seeing it pop up talking about your med pin, so I assumed early on you were in God mode. No, it's great to see the progress, though. It's really cool, and it's it becomes a little bit of a, I guess for everyone, a bit of a history lesson, right? As far as the progress that leading up to where we are today on this. That's cool.
And another thing, which obviously we're not going to be showing anything of this today, but we do have like some environments which are like infinitely bigger than this sort of location. So you can imagine like the kind of work that goes into a space that's
like
this
a whole
size.
planet.
Yeah.
Think of something that's set on an entire planet, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the other thing that we really want to do with Squadron as well, is kind of make everything like handcrafted. Like we don't want things to be kind of very procedural. Like we're really trying to, even down to like the art and the way we're kind of tackling stuff, is it's very much like a lot of assets are kind of unique and locations are unique. So rather than kind of saying, oh, here's like a base core set of assets and we're going to kind of reuse them with a few hero assets kind of thrown in every now and then, we're really trying to make every space like its own kind of identity. And you're not going to get like halfway through the game and suddenly go, oh, I've seen that prop or that crate in like 15 levels already.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything really is.
That makes me wonder how is the Odin system going to compare to the rest of the star systems in the game? If Squadron 42 requires all these really, really unique, highly polished locations, and they are planning on bringing the Squadron 42 assets over to Star Citizen, will they have to make a different type of asset? Will it be transferred over in lower detail, or is that star system just going to be the nicest star system in the whole game, and then everywhere else is like, kinda Odin quality? That's really interesting. It's a very different approach from Star Citizen. And yeah, I wonder how that affects the game overall.
Yeah, you'll recognize
No, I mean,
manufacturers though, but
Yeah, the attention to detail. I mean, you can always, I've always been surprised year after year on what we're doing and how we're pushing and where we're pushing. But I think in the end, it all pays off, right? You have this sense of believability. We're putting the focus and getting these accurate play spaces, and on top of that, if we can have that sense of every single asset being handcrafted, I think it just adds more and more to that realism and believability of the player interacting in that space. That's cool.
Exactly. So
good stuff.
The thing I was going to also show was just basically how we're kind of like working on the next step, and again without kind of like showing the AI too much, kind of playing it in the game. I wanted to kind of basically bring up some map stuff and how we kind of tackle kind of like working out where the AI is going to go. So you can see in this screenshot, this is kind of an isometric kind of angle.
All right, sorry guys, I'm getting a lot of drop frames here on the stream for some reason. I will... No idea why. Just gonna give it a couple seconds and see if this recovers without me needing to do anything. Come on, buddy. Sorry for the delays, everybody. All right, I'm going to check the rest of the house and see if there's something going on with the internet. We'll be right back, guys. Very sorry. All right, we are not getting any better. And just like that, we're back to green. Okay, whatever.
Of the station where you can kind of see the different tiers. You can actually see part of habitation here. We don't actually have
that gravity room right in the center is where we just were, right?
Exactly, yeah, just down there, yeah.
Yep, cool.
And then this is the kind of the mission control section. We do actually have the hangar off to the left, and the reason why this isn't here is because we're still kind of like making some tweaks to the hangar, so we're still kind of like finalizing some of the areas in that. But then if we kind of cycle through again, you can kind of see we've got
the disc is the skywalk, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so you can kind of see, as we've already kind of covered, there are 3 main kind of tiers to the station. And then what we do is we essentially break it up into zones. So you can see here we've kind of got like zone 1, which is the kind of green side, and then which this would basically be like the regular skywalk that we've seen. And then zone 3 over here, for example, is like the decommissioned skywalk, and then you've also got habitation over here. Zone 2 is the engineering stuff, and again the gravity section with the server rooms. And then we've got kind of zone 4, which is like the very top deck and the kind of mission control section. And the reason why we kind of break these up is something that kind of Nick touched on earlier, was actually for AI and how they kind of like behave in the environment. So for example, we were toying around with like AI placement. So this is in no way kind of like the final plan. This was just like a recent kind of iteration of what we would have done to kind of plan out like AI patrols, how, the sort of behaviors that we want them to have. And for example, we would say that, say in zone 1, you kind of approach this character and they spot you and they're an enemy. They would probably obviously alert their teammates. What would then happen is these
I'm sorry,
guys
this might be my VPN. I am going to have to try and turn it off. We have to use them pretty regularly because Discord is blocked here. I do not know if this will crash the stream or not, turning it off.